roundtable. So we're going to recreate a roundtable, not physically in space, but in terms of how the session is run. So I want people to feel like they can raise their hands and that they are part of the discussion as well. So I'm going to have to use my professor skills to try to recreate a virtual roundtable in terms of how we interact with one another. So these are our experts that are part of the roundtable. Could you just briefly introduce yourself and real quick?
Okay, Petrulis. I'm the chair of the Climate Protection Action Committee.
Denise, Fairchild, Emerald Cities Collaborative.
Petrulis, I'm also on the Climate Protection Action Committee.
And I'm Aric Jensen. I'm an assistant county administrator in Richland County.
Wonderful. So the purpose of this discussion is to figure out what did we learn and where do we go from here? And so in answering that question, I would like everyone to draw on their experiences of what they learned in their sessions. I learned a ton. I found out so much stuff that I didn't know from these sessions, but also what you know from your own background. So in this case, 40 years of experience. In Aric's case, many years of experience in government and county governments in Nevada and here. So drawing on that experience, you know, where can we go from here? The way I want to structure it is first we're going to talk about opportunities that we learned about. Then we're going to talk about challenges that we learned about. And then at the end, we're going to use the thinking about those opportunities and challenges to talk about next steps, and what the next steps could be for Columbia or for us as activists and organizers. So let's start with opportunities. There's a lot of different opportunities. I'm going to throw one out to start off, but anybody can jump in and say, here's an opportunity that I saw. For me, one of the stars of the show is the Biden administration federal money. Right? This looks like an enormous opportunity for municipalities, and it's one that was highlighted in Dr. Fairchild's keynote address. How can we take it, like, what are those specific opportunities in that money and in that funding, things that we may have learned about, opportunities that you may have seen? And feel free, any of the panelists or anybody in the room, to talk about opportunities related to that. Very collaborative, raise your hand, whatever. Anybody can chip in, chime in.
I saw anybody.
Any.
I was just going to say, if you are still learning about Justice 40 as I am, one of South Carolina's leaders in environmental justice is hosting a webinar in 2 weeks for any community organization that wants to come and learn. His name is Reverend Leo Woodbury. And if I get perhaps the link and information to somebody on Climate Ready Columbia, maybe we can share it widely with any community organization who wants to come and learn about it. But yeah, so he worked with the Obama administration and is now excited to work with communities with the Biden administration. So yeah, look for more info specific to South Carolina.
Excellent.
And I would just add to that, Reverend Woodbury is amazing. He is nationally known. We love the work that he's doing here in the South. In fact, I just found out last night that he's also in South Carolina. So I do see that as an opportunity that one, the money is there, Justice 40. So everybody knows that it means that 40% of all the money that's coming out is gonna help particularly low-income communities. So, and figuring out what the benefit is, right? So the work is to really define the benefit. It's not just in money, but it's also, can we improve residential properties? I heard in the energy efficiency session yesterday that there is no utility dollars for landlords and or residents. I found that unbelievable, but if that's true, there is going to be at least $3.5 billion of money available for energy efficiency upgrades for low-income housing. So being able to build, and state will get that money, and there should be funds coming to community groups directly that you can tap into and upgrade the properties in this community and create jobs out of that. Train small contractors to do that kind of upgrade work.
Yeah, I don't think that was true, that there's no money available for utilities.
Yeah.
But it's somewhat limited, and the really complicated part, I think, particularly in the city of Columbia, is so many, about half the residences here are rentals. And so that gets a little more complicated in terms of landlord and stuff. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means that it might have another dimension.
Yeah, that's an issue, in all rental properties, they call it split incentives. But if you don't have a slum landlord, they would find, this opportunity to improve the asset, and you have to sell it as, oh, this will improve your property value if you do this. And pretty soon they'll come down hard on you if you have high levels of, energy usage. So it's an opportunity to bring money to the table and encourage them, motivate them.
Yeah.
I have a question. My impression from just a couple of representatives at the General Assembly that I've spoken with, when you say Justice 40 money, they don't know how it's broken out, the federal monies that are coming in. And so trying to thread, I would like to see a follow-up at some point for us to figure out how that needle has been threaded, because we know what it's supposed to be going toward. But we're hearing Justice 40, what's that? Well, you know, federal monies do that. Well, we don't know what pot that is. So there seems to be a gap in knowledge of our normal representatives in the General Assembly. I don't know if that's anyone else's experience.
Well, can we use this to transition to, what do we specifically know about the application process for this? So Aric, you're in county government, anybody from city government, do you know of what the process is? Is there a way that some of our nonprofit organizations or other organizations we're involved in can apply for grants to be doing that work?
So having just gone through 2 years worth of federal programs that just literally appeared out of the blue and we had to implement rapidly, we're talking everything from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan dollars, to CARES funds, to you name it. We get very little guidance. It comes sometimes it comes after the money. Sometimes the money comes first, and then you get the guidance on how to administer it and what to do with it. And so I have heard almost nothing on this topic from, directly, from the federal government. But that's not surprising. We got rules for coronavirus funds after some of the money had come off. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, what I say about that is, and we know this because we work with her, and the CARES Act and the ARPA money was discretionary money. Y'all just got a ton of money to do anything you needed to fill your budget gaps, to help, unemployed folks. And so some of that money still may be floating around. I don't know if you know that, but a lot of cities have unused ARPA money that could be used for anything. Because it came with no guidance. You're absolutely right. Just help. This is for you cities. Do what you need to be done with that. The infrastructure dollar, the 1.2 trillion, is coming with rules. And it's still kind of stuck up in the sausage making that goes on the Hill, and OMB is looking at it, and every agency's got to put out their guidance and their rules, and it's got to be, so it's coming out, and it's coming out very slowly, and the money is coming out more slowly in this regard. So it's not unusual that folks don't know what that means, but it also is an opportunity. It's an opportunity because they still, when the guidance come out, they still won't know what community benefit means. And so what does that mean is that the community needs to tell them. Yeah, well, this is how this money is going to benefit our community. This is an organizing opportunity for you to help your legislators figure it out.
So Richland County received $20 million in emergency rental assistance funding, little less than a year ago. And we distributed all that at a record rate. In fact, we were one of the 3 organizations or 3 jurisdictions that the Treasury Department recognized for their performance. And so we just got another $20 million from folks who didn't distribute it. So in other words, Treasury took the money back from them because they hadn't distributed it fast enough and they reallocated it to us. But the interesting thing is that we had first tranche of money that came, that had a certain set of rules. When that went out, the Treasury realized, you know what, we didn't quite handle that right. So then, when the second tranche of that 20 million came out, they said, okay, we're revising the rules. Here are the rules now. And this money, the 20 million that we're getting now is money left over from the first tranche from ERA 1. So we have to apply the rules for ERA 1, even though ERA 2 rules were out and we use that for our second. So we have to go backwards in time and reuse the rules or reapply the rules. And those kinds of things happen all the time. Part of it's just because it happens so quickly. And the federal government has so much money they're putting out, they don't have the time to form, for all of you who have taken your civics class and so forth, one of the strengths of government is the fact that it's slow. It's reliable. It's there. When everything hits the fan and the dam breaks, government is still there. It doesn't wash away. But when we have to be nimble and we have to start new programs and things, we take a lot of time and we miss opportunities. And so it's that balance between being strong, resilient, the rock, but being nimble enough to make things happen when you have to.
Can I use that as a transition to another opportunity that I want to talk about, which is related to this? So I went to a session on, it was hosted by, is it Charge Point? I got that right. Which is a private company that installs charging stations. And they were talking about how much money there's going to be for these charging stations. So apparently $5 billion to states, and who are then going to do these like amazing superchargers along the highways and everything to create the electrical infrastructure for electric vehicles. But then an additional 2.5 billion that is going to be available for grants, where like cities and counties could apply for these kind of charging stations. Now, one of the amazing things, I mean, you're immediately like, if there's gonna be all these grants, like who has the time to research these grants and write all these grant applications? But one of the things that they offered was they said, we will write the grant applications with you or for you in cooperation with you because it benefits our business to do so. I'm like, wow. So that's a great example of a private-public partnership, right? So you were saying that you need something that's nimble and fast, and government, that's not their strength. But if you can find something private that can be a little bit more nimble and fast and build those relationships, it can be a more effective way of getting stuff done. So I wanted to talk about that as another possible opportunity, private-public partnerships. Did anybody see anything or in any of the talks or any ideas or inspirations from other cities, Denise, about what good examples of that, things we should be looking for?
Well, I can say this, that a lot of money will be coming to educational institutions and universities. And there are opportunities to partner with those institutions around training, with the education and training dollars they'll be getting. Obviously some research dollars, there's a whole host of things that you guys at the university will have access to. So that's one partnership that you're already embedded in the university to sort through that, figure out how you link up with communities. Yeah, so I'll just stop.
University is a great opportunity. Yeah.
So yes, I mean, if you are in the private sector, I mean,
Nonprofit.
you're a nonprofit.
It's private.
And that's what that's the point I wanted to make, is that we have entities out there that are bridges between the two. They're nonprofits for the most part, or NGOs, as I was taught to call them, non-governmental organizations. And so nonprofits do that. They can bring together, they can have one foot in the government world and one foot in the for-profit world. Even though they're nonprofits, they still accomplish functions that are effectively similar.
And if you are, who's a nonprofit in here? Raise your hand. So you should also go, an opportunity, it's called the Justice 40 Accelerator. I don't know their website, but what they do is they help you as a nonprofit deconstruct, all this government language and all of the grants, where all the grants are. And if you find one that you want, they'll help you write it. And that this is a nonprofit, a collaboration of national nonprofits, that if you want to apply for money from EDA or transportation or HUD and don't know how to do that, they have folks that will first help make sure you have the nonprofit infrastructure to handle these federal funds, which is not easy, you know, it's a lot of paper. And then also help you to apply for that. So, and they give you about $75,000, and then you can, you're in a sort of a peer learning group of other groups that are trying to compete, and get best practices and ideas to do that. So Accelerator, Justice 40 Accelerator. And then I'll continue to say, we have a Justice 40 playbook as well, which takes all of these different programs and organizes it in a way that's more community friendly and more, uses lay language.
Well, you said we, who is?
Emerald Cities Collaborative, so you go to our website, emeraldcities.org, and look for the Justice 40 playbook. That's helping you to figure, it's not a fundraising guide, it's an organizing guide. How to organize yourselves to go after the state, to use the money in the right way, or to go after the city to use the money in the right way. There's gonna be a lot of what they call block grant money at the state level. And that means they can use it in a discretionary way. So whose discretion, theirs or yours?
Yeah, can you, to help, as people, I'm sure wheels are turning at this room right now, to help people think about the possibilities, right? Do you have examples of the kinds of things, or like a specific thing, like, it seems like energy efficiency upgrades in housing is a big one for you. And any others, or is that, you think that's a really good successful model for local nonprofits?
You have an answer.
I was just gonna say, stormwater mitigation is something that DC has done some interesting things with also with public-private partnerships, but sort of a similar energy dynamic, but like garden spaces on roofs and less concrete in your property, that sort of thing.
A lot of that green infrastructure, landscaping,
Yeah.
urban islands and bioswales and all of that.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, that's Brian Burrows, he's a candidate for county council.
District 6.
This
Go
is
vote.
sick.
So
Richland,
When-
Richland County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, District 6.
Reginald,
Go ahead.
Reginald?
Oh, what organization that will facilitate these hookups as far as electrical plugins? Is there an entity that's not associated with the government or either private practice that does that? Anyone?
The one that
contract?
came, that gave the presentation here is called ChargePoint, and they're just a private company that installs charging stations. And the main customer for that so far has been like the government.
I think he's asking a different question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He was asking about hookups for residents.
For residents, in private, whatever it may be, yeah, so right now, there's no hookups that have taken place.
Oh,
with
you
any
mean like
money.
a hookup for a charging station at a residence?
Well.
Or
that's
you mean like
possible.
hook you up
But
with?
anyone out doing this work now,
I see.
is any company doing this work now, have anybody contracted with the government of anything of that
And you
nature?
mean energy efficiency upgrades?
Right,
Or EV charging stations.
correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so if you've seen anybody with a Tesla or Kia or whoever's got these electric vehicles, they have somebody that puts the electrical stations in their garages, or whatever. They're just electricians that know how to do it. The job, the future work is going to be really training and getting the C10 electricians to do this. However, the more enduring work in this, it's going to be maintenance. Because those charging stations, 40% of them need to be repaired at any given time. And the worst thing you can do is to have a Tesla and can't get your Tesla charged, right? Because this thing is not working, gas is not coming out of this pump. The maintenance is like and I'm sorry, I keep throwing economics and climate together, but that's not what I do. The maintenance work is like a 9-month training program. You can get, returning citizens and all kinds of folks trained to do that ongoing maintenance.
Okay.
But mostly it's the electricians and people that lay the cables, so they're like laborers, so it's trade work.
And if I may add to that, the construction industry in general right now has a huge shortage of trades. And trades, again, that's your mechanical, your electrical, your plumbing, the folks who install all these equipment and maintain it. There's a very big shortage in this country. There's multiple reasons, and we can talk about that, ad nauseam, but it's a problem we have right now. And so the opportunity's here. If somebody was going to go out there and beat the bushes and find these, folks in high school at a young age and say, hey, this is a career path for you, here's the training, this is the opportunity.
So getting some money to like Midlands Tech, for example, to put some of these programs in place would be important, possible use of some of the Justice 40 money.
Is job training, is that a thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They get small pots of money for job training.
There needs to be more. That's one of the problems with that environmental folks often do is they want to do these policies like, we want everybody to put in heat pumps in their houses or whatever, and there's nobody trained to do it, or very few people. And if you start to mandate those kinds of requirements, and you haven't thought through all of those steps that it takes to get those things done.
If the conversion to electric vehicles happens, as it appears to be happening very quickly, where are the mechanics and service these vehicles? Where are the people who know how to install the charging stations, right? So,
on the other hand, a typical EV has about 500 parts. A typical gas engine car has about 5,000 parts. Yeah, right. And so the level of maintenance that's required for an EV is much less. So we're also talking about disruptions of people who are now mechanics with internal combustion engines, all that stuff.
And who now make the 5,000 parts. And who now make the 5,000 parts.
Exactly.
The machinists,
Right.
the machinists, mechanics.
Like the folks in the upstate that are,
so a possible opportunity would be partnering with someone like Midlands Tech to apply for grant money for a job training program.
There you
For
go.
one of these kinds of areas, right?
I was going to say along those lines a little bit. A couple of the sessions the 2 sessions that I attended today. The first was with a presenter from Sustain SC, who her work is really bringing sort of expanding the scope of the concerns of businesses in the state to connect with the need for conservation and sustainability. And I thought was one of the things that I saw there that I just thought was so interesting was that she's connecting, because a lot of the businesses in the state are international. And so besides being maybe they were attracted here because low regulation, low tax, or whatever, but they also have to answer to international requirements and international standards. And so among those standards is the SDGs, the sustainability development goals of the United Nations. And so there are a lot of businesses here that are now starting, and even some of the local businesses like Sunoco that are talking about responding to the SDGs. Mm-hmm. And this is like 16 different dimensions that include decreasing poverty, among all of those other kinds of things that, economic development and some of the other things. So So it seems to me that this is an opportunity for us to start to take a much more multidimensional view of business development. Something that is responding to not just somebody's bottom line, but is responding to the kind of social concerns that we all have. The things that we want to promote in terms of equity and social justice, those things, and do it in a way that maybe makes more sense to folks who are more oriented toward thinking about businesses and development. So I was really intrigued by that. And I think, if we started to promote this kind of multidimensional view and say, if we really want to keep bringing businesses to the state, what we need to do is to make sure that our state is friendly to the kinds of things that
comes in.
international businesses are responding to. I think that would be a really positive thing. And then we heard in the last session, we heard from Atlas Organics, which is a company that is here in South Carolina and increasingly all over the country, that takes food waste and turns it into compost. And there's some really interesting and exciting stuff going on. So those are a couple of examples. You started out asking about these partnerships between business and kind of environmental or social justice movements. And I was really I was encouraged by that.
If I could riff off of those two examples, I think I mentioned it last night about our, we have Microsoft as a client, we have Kaiser Permanente as a client. And this idea of anchor institutions, these are institutions that are making these huge climate commitments. Corporations that are trying to show up and outdo each other. I'm more green than you are, I'm more sustainable, I'm more resilient. And they're huge, huge commitments. And they hired us, in case of both of them, to figure out how to do it in a justice, community-oriented way. So part of their sustainability goals is that they're gonna green their supply chain, they're gonna fix their buildings, whatever, but we're turning that outwards. Okay, well, what are you doing in the community in which you operate, right? What are you doing to help communities become more resilient and more sustainable? So in Atlanta, actually this Wednesday, Microsoft, with a grant that we got to 3 Black women-owned food enterprises, developing a circular food waste economy in the west side of Atlanta. So that someone's gonna go and collect, they're gonna be in the supply chain for Microsoft to take all of their food waste. They will be giving away some to food banks, and the rest will be composted. They have a training program, a small business program associated with that. But it's all coming from Microsoft's commitment to be zero waste, right? And Kaiser's commitment to be 100% food, sustainable food in terms of its patient food, and creating forward contracts for urban growers or rural growers or local growers. So I keep saying, you got a university here, they've got huge spending power. Where are they buying their food? Are they 100% sustainable? What are they doing with their energy? How are they buying it? And what can they do to help develop solar arrays that will support local communities? So I think these are really huge. If you've got these institutions, if you've got these corporations, leverage it.
If I could dig into that a little bit, one of the things that strikes me about the example you just gave is that it would be hard to create that type of program in the blink of an eye, right? Like it takes time to identify vendors, to identify those things, and to do it in an equitable way takes a little longer. Do you have counsel for folks who are trying to do stuff with this money that's so flash in the pan, like it's a huge amount of money, but you have to spend it right now, and do that in an equitable way? It seems like it's especially difficult to focus on community voice and equity if you have to do it fast. Because if you're doing stuff fast, there are folks who are already tied into the sources of power, and it makes it hard to do equity. So anyway, I was curious if you had any counsel on how to approach that dynamic.
Investment.
fast money equitably.
I really do believe that you're right. You gotta organize, and organizing is time consuming, but I'd be surprised if you don't already have a organized community that can be brought to hold your officials accountable.
If I may respond to that.
Yeah.
So for example, Richland County has an office of small business I can't remember what the O stands for again. Anyway, basically, we have internal committees and organizations that specifically do all these things. So when the money came, it was not particularly difficult for us. We just said, okay, you guys are already doing this. You know, what are our policies? Well, how do we make this happen? So for example, again, our emergency rental assistance program, which really is, all the money goes to 50% or less of LNI. I mean, that's what the policy set up as. We had friends in the community, we had established contacts, we had existing organizations. It was not hard for us to make it happen. But I suspect that other jurisdictions did not have those structures in place. And that's one reason why they did not spend their money in a timely fashion, and why it came to us.
Why it came back to you. Yeah.
Just quickly, we've come back to this question about energy efficiency a couple times. My understanding is that some past efforts with energy efficiency have really been stymied by the need for broader issues about housing quality, that you can't actually put the energy efficiency in until you make sure that the home is of sufficient standards. And I'm wondering where that piece of the puzzle fits into this discussion.
Actually, the new money, actually is gonna address that. So you can't do some things if your roof is falling apart, or your electrical is just so out of whack. So it's been recognized now for more than 10 years. And I believe that there's a special, Department of Health and Human Services and HUD hooking up with DOE to begin to make it such that you can do more than the basic energy efficiency measures.
I don't know, just piggyback on something you was talking about, as far as the international companies that had come to South Carolina. And the negativeness from the very beginning that the company brought into South Carolina with their environment and those things. And this is like a cleanup that has to be done. And some of the things that have been going unnoticed by these big companies. And now I think you're just trying to clean up the mess, yes, still create jobs. And I was just saying earlier, you should share the wealth. I know you want to be the best and brightest in the group. And there's other states where companies can set up in these other states, and not saying taking that from South Carolina, but just share the wealth. And maybe not so much environment, our ecosystem here is getting weaker as far as I know what time I could ride and look at the skylines of green trees and how beautiful that is. Now you go and look for those green trees, you look at straight brands. It takes less time to destroy a forest than they do grow on. So we are going straight up some unvolatile.
Yeah, it's a good point. And the state has a history of not enforcing good citizenship by many businesses.
Yeah, that's
And
what
so
that's what I see.
yeah.
Most of it, and they
So-
just say Justice 40. If you were talking about Justice 40, it should have been in place for a long time.
Well, I actually wrote an article that said, we need to go to Justice 100, but anyway, it's the same. You know,
Well, there's
just one thing
Justice
on
100.
this. Did you guys, we're running companies out of California because they can't come without, well, first of all, if they're gonna get any public help, public dollars, taxpayer dollars, and they can't come without community benefit plans. They have to commit to a certain percentage of local hire and local supplier. They have to commit to certain environmental standards. They've got to build a park, whatever the community wants. Do you guys have that? Do you use CDAs? I mean, it's pretty standard practice.
I would be so interested in just getting companies to come here and looking for jobs.
the race to the bottom.
EPA.
Can I comment on that really quickly? Or go to?
Yes, I want to transition from talking about opportunity, but I'm going to use this to pivot, so you might have an opening.
Okay, and if not, we'll do that.
Okay, the pivot is from talking about opportunities to challenges, which is where we
went
was
to.
bringing up. So one important challenge here is working with corporations who don't necessarily have the best interest of the public in mind, working with the state regulatory environment that isn't necessarily protecting the public in the ways that we would like to see. Other challenges that people have encountered from their sessions, I'll throw one out there that I'd also like to put on the table. I call it challenge connectedness. So one obstacle to connectedness is kind of siloing of knowledge, right? Where different people are very specialized in various areas, but they're not talking to each other, not able to talk to each other. Another component of that, which is slightly different, is coalition building. So it's one thing you're not talking to another, it's another thing like whether you've got a coalition together. This conference was built off of, the idea was a coalition building model. So the way the conference was designed is I just went out to every environmental group that I could find, every municipal organization I could find, and invited them to come and host a panel and be part of it, and then hopefully bring along their constituencies as well. But it's not obvious to me that everybody sold on this coalition building model. And it's a challenge. It's hard to get people working together. You can get them to the conference, but you can't necessarily get them attending sessions other than their own, right? So the coalition building work is a challenge as well. And I would connect another challenge to throw out there is connecting with the grassroots, connecting with the public. And it's particularly hard here in South Carolina, connecting with public. And I will also say minority communities of color, people who have often been on the losing end of bad environmental policies, finding ways to get them a place at the table and to bring them into the process effectively. I know that's a challenge that all of the nonprofits in the room are definitely concerned with, and I know it's something that we struggle with. So throwing all those out on the table, any comments about, or other challenges to add? Emma.
It brings to mind a couple of things for me, that the organizations in South Carolina that have been siloed are beginning to unsilo. We are beginning to see that we have to build coalitions because of what we're up against. And it's slow and it's painful. On the other hand, we're beginning to not worry about, but keeping our eye on the ball. But one thing that's related to that is competing for funds. When you're a nonprofit, you want donations. You don't really want, you're partnering with someone on this, but hey, you all go over there and I'm gonna get some donations here. Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do. So that's one of the challenges that we've had is like, we want our name to be, you all are here, our name is here, donate to us. And we all have had that because that's, how else do you run your organization? You're putting your organization first so that we compete for the dollars. And we really have to kind of put that to the side and not worry about the dollars first, but do the grassroots first. And do that together too. And not just try to build membership lists, which you have to have, but that's been a long-standing practice we have to break among ourselves. And then, okay, I know that's 2 comments. Concerning the idea that we're going to bring minorities into the group. No, they already have. We have to listen to them when we move in as they want us, and that's something we have to think about, especially for us who are primarily white organizations. Okay, and Reverend Woodbury and Representative Joe Neal said, you can't come riding in on your horse. Okay, stop it. Okay, you're not doing them any good, you're not doing yourselves any good. And that's something we also have to practice and work on. So I just want to make those comments. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I'm by far not an expert. I'm only 23 years old. I'm just on the CPAC committee, so I'm the youngest person on, I guess, just for a different
You're our student representative.
Yeah,
as
student
well.
representative. I would say from my experience being on the committee, a volunteer committee, I think one of our biggest challenges is that we're all volunteers. We all have lives. We just don't have enough time to do all the things we want to go out and do. And so we want to take advantage of all the resources coming out of the pipe. We want to advise the mayor on, what we think the city could be doing. But we all have lives and we can't tackle all these different things we want to do. And so it's a matter of, we have to prioritize, okay, maybe we're gonna do this event, and we're gonna work on this plan. But at the end of the day, Bob can speak to this too, we're so limited in the things we can actually accomplish because of our full daytime jobs in addition to coming home and having to do this. And so what we really want is, someone inside the city at a senior position. And I think Larry spoke to that earlier with the university, that's advising the president or the mayor in this case of, how to view things through a sustainable lens, and always use those considerations to fuel every initiative and every project. So.
I'd like to add to that a little bit, and that is that, probably everybody in this room is overstretched and overtaxed and, you're doing your life and you're also trying to, engage in the existential challenge of the 21st century and try and move that needle. And, one of the things that I would say is that, yes, we need to learn to prioritize and all that stuff. We also need to learn how to empathize with each other and love each other. And that's something that I keep thinking about. We probably, many of us may feel a lot of climate grief, a lot of worry, anxiety about things. There are times when, you just get an attack of the willies because of all of this horrible stuff that's going on. And I think learning to support one another and to appreciate everybody's efforts and to just to know that everybody's doing the best they can. And I think that's just so important.
And something we
And we
didn't.
don't do it very well.
No, I hadn't, Bob's been on our committee for what, 2 years now, and I hadn't met him in person until last week.
Yeah.
But so we had a real outing last week to get to know each other, and we talked about these things, because it's not, we all feel the same way about this, and we need to express these feelings, and I think that's probably a good way to also build coalitions, is by getting groups together, maybe not even to talk about climate things initially, but to just build relationships and then see where those take you further on. So
Yeah.
Jump in on this. So there was an interesting graph or chart last night, for those of you who watched it, that showed the ozone depletion, basically the amount of pollution that was in the environment during the COVID years versus previous. And, we look at it and we go, that's amazing. We have cut our carbon amount, whatever happened during COVID as a result of this. But at the same time, the psychological effects of that particular event have not yet been fully analyzed, understood. And so on one side, we're like, oh, that was great, COVID. Look what we did. We cut pollution and we cut, this is amazing. But then we go to what effect on people as human beings. And so the question in my mind is, how do you achieve both? And that is the $1,000,000 question that I don't know if anybody will solve it.
And the other thing is that we weren't having a lot of fun. And I think one of the things about people who are intensely focused on a problem like this is that we forget that maybe we need to just, if we really want to attract people to participate, we need to be having some fun as well. And if we cut all this carbon emissions and we did it by basically making it impossible to have any fun, that's probably not a really attractive future.
So I would flip that. I would flip that. I would say, you know, the great quit, the great resignation, people stopped and they said, oh my God, what the heck was I doing for? You know, I don't want to do, I don't want to go back to that. I'm not going back to the office. I'm not doing 12-hour days. I'm liking this. Okay, they're, you know, at different levels, not everybody, but you get $4 million, 4 million people quitting every month, you know, and taking on different lifestyles. I think they even realized that they weren't having fun before.
You know, you're working that hard to make money, but you know, the best
Why?
things in life are free.
Why am I working to spend money? Why am I working to spend money?
Go out to nature.
When I can go to.
I think as an educator, one entree to all this is through the next generations. For people who have families with kids and grandkids, or people who work in schools, that is a way of drawing people in. If you've got kids, you know that you become friends, sort of sometimes better, worse with your kids, friends, parents, right? That's a network that's not really taken advantage of so much. But also, I mean, I think the person that speaks, in my view, most powerfully on this planet is Greta Thunberg. And she's 20 years old. And I think we got to start listening to 20-year-olds. And that is that's, for one thing, it's their future that we're messing with. For another thing, we had this little conversation at the engaging students session. There were a few people there. Millennials and whoever comes after X, Y, Z, I lost track of the lettering, but they care a lot because they have to care a lot, right? It's not a game to them. It's not like a project. It's not like the Dominion guys were great, but they've seen it takes time. We don't have a lot of time. And besides, we're talking about COVID the last 2 years. They're looking at their future like COVID. You know, they're saying there's no fun here. I don't even know there's gonna be a planet. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to start a family, and they're not. They're not starting families. They're not able to start households. They all have roommates. I stopped having roommates after I graduated graduate school, but these guys are not, they're, you know, all my kids are 30-somethings, except the one who's married has roommates. That's the only way they can afford to live. So I think we got to start listening to 20-year-olds and having students involved. Matt done a great job on that, but that's, I will note on one, I used to teach in Carolina in the 80s and 90s. I'm back here retiring. I really enjoy talking to the people that run the Office of Sustainability at USC, which has been buried in a corner of student life and whatever, which is essentially a powerless office. They're doing great things from where they are. But the university is a huge opportunity because they're talking to 20-year-olds and 18-year-olds all the time, right? So we're missing big opportunities. And I think, again, if you got people trying to live their lives, we're talking about, everybody has a life to live. But they also are living through their kids, their nephews, their nieces, their grandkids, whatever. And that draws them into the conversation. And if you start talking to kids, sorry, I keep using the word kids, I don't mean it pejoratively, it's just that I'm old now. But if you start talking to the young people, they care a lot and they really can contribute a lot, and they're looking for a lot from us, and we're not asking. We're not giving them the opportunity. Matt's doing it. And this is what Matt's doing here in his class. I know he's not alone at USC. University at large is not, I hate to be critical of my place I taught for 20 years, but it's not really doing its share here. Of course, how many undergraduates do we have at USC? 30,000?
22 more.
20,000? 20,000 people, 20,000 young people who are here for an education for whatever reasons, doing all kinds of things. And how many, the Office of Sustainability works with 50. They have 50 people that work with them through their programs, 50 students out of 20,000. So not to be critical, I'm trying to put it on the positive side. Opportunity is there, and that's a connector. And students want to have fun too, and they'd like to have a fun future. So let's, that's where the hope comes in. So thanks.
That's great. Any last one? I do want to move on to the way forward. I want to make sure we have enough time for that because that's like a really juicy discussion here. So we want to finish this
Yeah,
off with
I have
challenges.
just one more challenge, sorry, and maybe it is the way forward. I'm interested in learning more about how the city and county resources complement one another and what opportunities there are for a more coordinated regional approach that includes the small towns like Casey, West Columbia, we haven't mentioned Lexington, but they're just there. And how we're moving in that direction. So is there an equivalent at the county level of Mary Pat?
I knew Mary Pat did, I would tell you, but.
Mary Pat, the sustainability coordinator for the city. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
okay,
that
sorry,
was.
I've been here 8 months, so I'm still getting to know this, I apologize.
Yeah.
And I came from Nevada before that, so
Where did
I'm
that?
really getting to know this. No, I mean, not exactly. No. The simple answer is that the county and the city effectively have different roles. And the county is, at the general rule, municipalities exist because there are certain needs that are not being met by the county, more granular type things typically, very small neighborhood type issues. Counties just are not good at that because we have such a huge wide jurisdiction and we have such a wide audience of issues that we have to address. And so a lot of times, the county and the city, we just do different things. But this is an issue where we should be working together better. Because sustainability, it is a systems approach. It's not just environment. As Denise said, it's economic. That's I put that in my notes from her keynote. It's all economics when it gets down to it. Because if you're not fiscally sustainable, then it just falls apart.
So just one of the challenges that came out of the conversation in the Planning for Heat group was that there's been, we'll hear about tree canopy loss, but a lot of that's been happening in the county by developers, and then they've requested to be annexed by the city. And the coordination on how we preserve canopy in those high pressure development areas, for instance, would be an opportunity to do that. And there you go, it's back to the money.
So if we could transition now to thinking about the way forward and solutions to these problems. And so let me just get that conversation started by tying together some elements that have come out. So some of these opportunities and challenges we've identified kind of pair well, where the opportunity speaks to the challenge and becomes a possible way of addressing the challenge, right? So if one of our challenges is coordinating better with the public and coalition building, well, one of the opportunities is grant money that could potentially allow us to be working with and partnering with people in the community. So if you're working to do a jobs training program and you're focused on trying to make sure that happens in an equitable way, so you're helping to maybe make sure that that's at a HBCU or it's at a part of the county that has been traditionally neglected, that there is an opportunity to be working with the public and developing relationships with the public and doing that good work that you want to be doing. And it's an opportunity to be building coalitions with the people that you would be using as your partners in that kind of thing. So that's one way that the opportunities and challenges could speak to each other, right? The opportunities could be ways of solving these. Other things that I'm interested in hearing any reactions or thoughts to that. I would also like to hear something specifically on like climate ready Columbia, like what, but not specifically like, do we want to do this conference again? I mean, maybe if you want to talk about that, but like, how do we coordinate? Like, what's the way that we can coordinate in the future? So we can make that super concrete. It seems like a lot hinges on being able to get access to this grant money. I mean, could potentially be a game changer for Columbia. All of this grant money, if we could somehow get together and figure out how to use it to strengthen all of our nonprofits, strengthen the communities that we advocate for, strengthen municipal government. But in order to do that in a coordinated way where we're all working together, how are we going to be working together like that? What should that look like? Or do you want to do it together? So those are a bunch of questions I'm throwing out. Interested to hear people's thoughts. Anybody?
I think one of the overarching challenges that I hear in all these panels and all these discussions is the state government. And I think that this conference didn't do a good enough job of bringing in state legislators. We brought in a few state regulators. I mean, I think, you know, we have the party in power. Party in power isn't too fond of the environment. And we haven't really roped them in to try and convince them otherwise. And I,
Well, they were invited.
they were.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
4 or 5 emails, yeah. Every elected county, every elected official in Richland County was invited at least 4 times.
Always assume they're invited. even if
Yeah.
They don't come.
How were they invited, Matt? How were you contacting them?
I sent them emails, and that's usually what, if you talk to the people at the State House, so I think that's the best way to get through. Paper mail tends to just get thrown away, emails is usually.
And Matt knows many of them personally, so it's not just a random email.
Right.
Yeah, so they're personal apps too, yeah, sure.
And many replied to the emails that got sent through the conference email as well. So we also took that tactic given Matt's other activities and projects, and we wanted to make sure that they weren't providing any bias one way or the other.
But here's a challenge, it's not just participation though, it's the state regulatory environment creates serious, obstacles for the kinds of stuff we want to do. So the most obviously in the case of energy.
One thing I learned, the biggest thing I learned maybe here at this conference was at the Dominion, the Dominion session. I'm calling it that. That's not what it was called. Maybe regulatory.
But procuring.
Yeah.
You're procuring renewables, right?
Okay.
Because the guy from, I forgot what his name was, Hamilton something, Hamilton Davis.
Yeah.
He was from a solar company, yes, right? And somebody from Dominion Energy. And then we had somebody who was the third one was in the regulatory side. And it was surprising to me how frustrated they are in getting things done. Because in kind of, not the solar company, they're generally whatever, but they're frustrated and not moving, being able to move forward because of the bureaucracy, not completely stymied, but frustrated, right? So how that connects with the state legislature, I don't know. I mean, but there must be got to find a champion in there, and and bring them into the game. But it's not as if some people in the power structure, and Dominion clearly owns South Carolina. I hate to put it that way. It's a vertical monopoly. They own everything. Not every state works that way, but they're in the game, and they understand also there's something in it to them to. It's not a lose-win; it's a win-win for them. But so that was a
Can I
connecting
jump on to
ledge,
how
but that would be excellent.
a way forward for this? So I really want to be focusing on
Right.
positive ways forward, what we want to do next. I think that you're pointing out something that's really, really true and a big problem. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel here in terms of like creating relationships with legislatures. We have Conservation Twitter South Carolina, which puts an enormous energy to doing this and does a very good job. And they came to account here. That's a coalition, right? Like, so if we were more integrated in Conservation Voter South Carolina and more on the same page about, because they're focused at state level, this group is about municipal level, right? If there were a better, stronger working relationship there and more of a coalition there, we don't have to like create relationships with these legislatures. We have to be partnering with the organizations that are already doing that lobbying.
You're talking about lobbying, really, what you're talking about.
Lobbying, advocacy, relationship building. Yeah.
I will point out though that the mayor opened this conference, and he is, it's a nonpartisan office, but everybody knows he's a Republican. And and he has a lot of interest in this field. His take may be a little different than some of us in this room, but there's a potential ally there, or at least some potential overlapping interest. And I think that's something that we should be looking for as far as moving forward by exploiting the opportunities that come our way. And even talking about the Justice 40 money and all of that, Malcolm Baldrige, the business guy, once said that the definition of organizational development should be that you should be ready to exploit opportunities when they arise. And it seems to me that building that kind of capacity is something that we really could be focusing more on. It's one of the things that I've been, I think the CPAC has really been thinking about with regard to the city, is making sure that the city is staffed up so that when grant money comes along or other opportunities come along, that, you know, we've got a lobbyist in the state legislature who knows what the issues are and can help us. And, you know, we've got some capacity in the legal team so that we, you know, we can go to them as we're working, those kinds of things. And so I think that this building capacity is a really important aspect of moving forward.
So my thought is that being a guest here, and only seeing a little bit of what you are working with, you need power building. That's the way forward. You've got to build power, right? And the power,
Yes.
period, yeah. And so how do you do that? So there's the coalition building that you're talking about. I mean, that's absolutely key. I would not, and the power for what is the question. You need a campaign. You need to like coalesce everybody around a campaign, and that could be Justice 40. It could be, you know, something kind of singular as opposed to just everything, but something singular that you can begin to show. You've got all of these organizations that signed on, and all of these institutions and individuals, and that you can show up as, you know, not as a lobbyist and lobbying, but a constituency that really cares about whatever that thing is. The second thing I would say is that I would less go down that government rabbit hole than figure out your corporate strategy. All right, they're gonna be here pretty much long-term. They all have ESGs and SDIs and all these things that, you know, they're now beholden to and wanting to commit. They all have grant money. They all have purchasing power, spending power. I really have a corporate strategy. I'd have a corporate procurement strategy around sustainability. Most of them already have climate commitments, I would imagine. I do some research. I get your students to really figure what's, you know, look under that hood and see what's happening there. And then maybe your campaign is to work corporates, get them on your side, and they become a part of your power team to hit up your state legislature. They'll listen to you know, corporations. So I don't know, just a couple of threads that are going through about you can't do one-offs, and you know, you have to find something that's going to be sustained over time, and as you pick up your nuts, you start getting some more. So you know, start maybe small, but then keep building until you really become a power.
That's an amazing suggestion. I really like that. But in order for that to even be an option, right, there has to be some sort of like way for these different groups and parties to be at least communicating with each other.
Right.
Like, and I would like to hear people's answers to that question in the last 8 minutes. And I do not expect you to answer for anyone other than yourself. But for you in your organization, whether that's county government, city government, nonprofit, whatever it is, like, what would you like to see? Like, do you want an email list of all of the people so that we can send things like, this is what we just learned about how you apply for this grant money? Or do you want to have like a quarterly meetings that people could come to? Or like, what do you want for working together as a coalition of more than just your own organizations? I want answers. I'm going to make you uncomfortable until you tell me what you want.
A question.
I'm not gonna pass that. Becca?
I was gonna say, you know, kind of leaning into conservation voters and that model that just seems to work so well, you know. What if we could kind of like zoom in a little bit further in terms of our reach and our specific communities that we live in here. And from what I understand with conservation voters is, they kind of break up their different panels into various areas of focus, like, water, et cetera, so, I mean, if there are certain folks, who are interested in, continuing this, if you have a certain area of interest, maybe, you could be in this focus group, and I could be in this focus group, and then we could have, I mean, I don't know how often we would want to actually meet and discuss within those groups and how often we want to meet as a whole. And have, I mean, I think having just constant communication with one another is important as well. I kind of come from an arts and culture background more so than, environmental studies, and one thing that I always noticed in our community was that, we needed more walkie-talkies, within just our arts, and I mean, I think that it's kind of one of those things where we could maybe say the same for this, and this is, a centralized point that we can come to, but how can we take that further after we leave here today? How can we continue to communicate? And I mean, I would be in favor of, quarterly get-togethers or things like this, but, also just sharing of knowledge, or if people want to head up a certain focus group and kind of keep those balls rolling and cross-communicate, try to actively engage with our people that, we work and deal with all the time, and try to just, again, make that really a force of power that has a constituency and a belief behind it. So, I mean, I think there's a variety of ways we could do it, and I'm on board for, so yeah, I mean, I just think if we could model it something like conservation voters-ish on a more localized level, and how we want to meet, some digital, sometimes maybe together, however we can do that, I think it's great.
My experience trying to coordinate a bunch of people is that it's been helpful to have just one phone call with people so that you just give a short report out. And that's enough that people know who they should follow up with, and they have a sense of pieces moving around them. More than that, I worry about the burden of the time commitment, so that people just get to have broad situational awareness and then talk offline with people they really need to talk to.
What is this thing you said, phone call?
Yeah, sometimes you could do it with screens too, if you like to see people, but, yeah, that sort of, quick hour where you say, we got NARAL coming up, we got this coming up, we got this coming up, we're having heat week, we're doing this is the thing. And then, people just, at least in the calls we've had on a regional level, coordinating on some of the climate, on some climate things, be like, oh, by the way, did you hear? And making sure that happens. It's just one, but then subcommittees, if we, depending on the energy level, I don't know. It's what the
You're
one model.
working on the regional level? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I had a project that had about, I don't know, 20 some odd partners, partner organizations. And we would just, tag up like once a month, quick report out on what you're all doing and follow up afterwards.
May I pursue this as what follow up with what? Because things should lead to action eventually. So I'm not sure what we can accomplish with just phone calls, and I'm wondering if there's another way in that too.
So what I meant was that lots of people have ongoing activities and they're moving forward on grants. We're aware of them, and that someone will say, I've just received funding, we're going to move in this area, and or we're looking for help in this. And that's what the follow-up is who we can partner with.
Yeah, so it seems like you're getting at is we need some kind of alliance, state alliance of environmental groups.
Not state, municipal,
Okay, municipal,
city,
statewide municipal.
people who Midlands, people who Columbia
Yeah,
metropolitan
yeah.
area.
And have some, whether it's emails, some kind of website somewhere where everyone can share their knowledge about what's going on in this area across the state. and perhaps share their advice on how to go about pursuing a grant or letting other people know we're pursuing this grant. So we're not competing for resources or stuff like that.
So why not stay one?
Okay, so you're driving me crazy here, because, I'm not taking another phone call, okay? People are maxed. What I suggest, and I say this only because I'm a developer, I build stuff, and you need a project, right? To bring everyone together, that is gonna coalesce everybody's interest, and I, take back everything I just said earlier. Making Justice 40 is your project, right? Your city is going to have community development block grant money. Your state is going to have EECBG money, energy efficiency block grant money. There's going to be state revolving loan funds that can come out as grants. You need to find out how much money is coming into your state, how much money is coming into your city, and you need to go after it. We need everybody to sign on, and we said, we want 40% of this money to go to X, Y, and Z. Here. And that, money attracts people, and they'll show up as soon as you get something out of the deal. So use that as your campaign and organize folks to show up and be in a planning process, go into a planning mode, right? And so it's not just meeting once a month, but we're gonna plan. It's gonna be intense. It's gonna be like 3 months, 4 months. And you got a long window, but some intensive work that's gonna keep people on the phone when you do call.
I like that idea. Who here lives in a justice community, environmental justice community? So right now we have kind of not the right people at the table.
Justice 40 is any LMI community, any community that's impacted by climate. They have definitions for that, which means, income level and energy burdens, and you can look at your utility bills. You've got neighborhoods, you don't have to be like white, everybody's being screwed, okay? This is not everybody's, being messed over by the 1%. We're all in this together. So I think you could find a benefit.
Yeah, actually, I think my neighborhood is technically
Bourbon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know we're running out of time, but I just want to draw a comparison to if people that have been living here a while, just looking at the teachers movement over the past 10 years, and I'm sure everyone remembers how there's this huge, massive protest at the State House, and they were arguing that they wanted higher wages, higher salary, and they've made a lot of progress because they united behind that goal. And there's a whole bunch of teacher groups that all came together to accomplish that goal. And that's what I agree with you. Perhaps that's what we need to do is latch on to one idea and go ahead full force. So.
And I would like for it to be intersectional too, in the sense that it's not just the environment, it's the economic.
Yeah.
I love the other E word, economic.
Environment, economy, and equity.
Yes, 3 words.
Yes, 3.
Well, I think this sounds like a great idea too, but if you're gonna get a bunch of people around one thing, it's gonna take some conversations to get there. And I just wanna see how we're gonna have this conversation. A ton of people at this conference have been working in these same waters for years and have never met each other or spoken to each other until this conference. And I'm afraid we're never gonna speak to each other again. So just knowing that there is at least some receptiveness to following up in some way, shape, or form is helpful for me to know. And then there's a question about what form that takes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't know, but is any such thing as good climate project, bad climate project that tends to be a bad investment from the, from the perspective of just diving into that and trying to get money for it and throwing good money at bad climate projects and throwing good money at good climate projects. I'm sure all things probably have, and it's just a hypothetical kind of situation I'm looking at. I'm just something went into my head. that there has been some bad planning in some of these climate things that have thrown money down at it for nothing. So I guess we don't want to throw good money at bad project. Something like that.
Yeah, everyone's gotta unite around some big goal. It's gotta, pick really good
Because I
one,
think
right? It's really
we may
unifying
be in that
opportunity.
already with some bad climate things that have taken place, the way we are headed, because some things are uncovered in this particular conflict as well. So,
Well, we are over time, so I just
Just
want
want
to
to
say.
say one thing. It's quick, and that is, Mary Pat does the monthly speaking sustainability. I don't know why I can't say that on the first try. But anyway, everybody should be on that mailing list. So that's all.
I just wanted, gonna finish out the conference by thanking you all for hanging on.
Okay, the website, if we could get on.
For the conference.
Why don't we just talk?
I don't know, that's a conversation for another time. I want to thank all the students, everybody in the university, all of the panelists, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much.